Thanks for joining. I know I'm competing with lunch, so that's always a hard thing. Let me see if I know how to use this too. All right, so today I'm Jake Monroe, by the way, product marketing at Recorded Future. Come from a background from the intelligence community, looking at both counterterrorism and nation state cyber actors, and now really at Recorded Future talking about kind of our intelligence capabilities and bringing that to industry. Today we're going to talk mainly about using intelligence to understand the cloud threat landscape, looking mainly at some of our research that our finished intelligence team has been doing, and then looking at a way forward into what you can do about it. Kind of just touched on this, but first we're going to look at the environment. So talking about recent security events we've been seeing targeting various cloud providers or using various attack methods against the cloud. Then we're going to look at the threat landscape. So what are the attack vectors, the top TTPs, and the evolution of the threat actors across the whole threat landscape, specifically targeting cloud. And then finally, we're going to look at the path forward. So what are those foundational things you should be thinking about as you go forward to be able to secure what we're seeing across the threat landscape? So what we're seeing is the number of cloud-related attacks in the previous years, they've continued to increase. Here we've seen recent and diverse cloud-related attacks that we've seen from 2021 to 2022 up until March there. I'm just going to touch on a couple of them here. The first one being Bizarro distributing malware. A common attack for cloud-focused actors is when the attacker, in this case Bizarro, leverages their initial target's infrastructure as a proxy to disseminate their attack further. In this case, Bizarro did exactly that via AWS and Azure servers, hosting malicious MSI packages. And then the second one is Team TNT. So Team TNT, if you don't know, is one of the most sophisticated and prevalent cloud-related threat actors today. Recently, Alien Labs actually discovered a second wave of attack dubbed Chimera, revealing increased reliance on open source tools for Team TNT. The group's targeting was agnostic of any specific cloud, which included Windows, AWS, Docker, Kubernetes, and various Linux installations, including Alpine. Within 3 months, Team TNT was responsible for thousands of infections globally across, again, all cloud providers. So really what we're seeing, Bizarro and Team TNT using different methods, but increasing kind of their attacks over time as well. So even though the attacks are increasing, the attack vectors are really kind of staying the same. There are really 3 main attack vectors that we're seeing, and they're listed here kind of in priority order. Misconfigurations are known as the most common attack vector, and that still remains the case. But the type of common misconfigurations exploited most frequently is changing. I'm going to have more on that actually in the next slide. But looking at this, publicly exposed resources has historically been the most commonly exploited misconfig. But this is changing due to cloud service providers making it more difficult to accidentally expose a resource. IAM permissions on the bottom there are the most prominent misconfiguration today. And as you can see, 99% of the organizations that Unit 42 for this research researched had overly permissive policies, which is any permission that has not been used within 60 days. When it comes to stolen credentials, they're the next most exploited weakness within a cloud environment, and that continues to accelerate over time. The number of credentials stolen via info stealers within the last 60 days is at 570 million. This is a little bit dated, so it might even be more than that, with 39 million of those including active cookie sessions, acting as a method to bypass two-factor authentication. But as you can see here from a recent Sophos survey, enabling two-factor authentication is still a major issue for most companies, with 98% of companies having two-factor authentication disabled on their cloud accounts. And then last, but certainly not least here, is known vulnerabilities. So probably no surprise to you, but cloud known vulnerabilities are rising. More and more attackers are taking advantage of the growing list of known vulnerabilities, allowing them to plug and play certain exploits if the other 2 avenues aren't accessible. So really starting, looking at misconfigurations, then if that's not ready for them, going to stolen credentials, and then really trying the kind of known vulnerability route as we, continue to see more and more vulnerabilities as they go. And so, as I mentioned before, the IAM configurations are the main culprit today for misconfigurations. But the specific issue here is off-the-shelf policies aren't enough. They need to be scrutinized and vetted. If not, then you'll easily over-permission roles and policies. So I've kind of pulled together a series of interesting data points here to kind of hammer that home. The first is that most cloud customers use inline or CSP managed policies. Those that do provide 2.5 times more permissions while having 2.3 times lower usage of those permissions, leading to many over-permissioned IAM policies over time. And then additionally, of the top 5 policies permissioned for Azure and AWS at spot 2 and 3 respectively there, cloud users are permissioning the most powerful and dangerous permissions like admin access or owner. And you can see, oh, sorry, that the animation was wrong there, but the usage rate of each policy type of the top one there too. So those previous insights are really nice to have and provide context kind of to prioritize your controls. But having TTPs is always a good place to start for detection, creation, and implementation. So Recorded Future's Insikt group, which is our Finished Intelligence team, has done a deep dive into 5 of the most prevalent cloud-related actors and their recent attacks, coming out with the above TTPs that for clients to mitigate against. So there's nothing exceptionally new here. I'm sure you've seen some of these, but the combination of TTPs is specific to cloud infrastructure, which is what's different about this research. So for example, with the right access, key actors can escalate privileges and move laterally simultaneously. As you can see, valid accounts are called out multiple times due to their heavy use and relation back to stolen credentials that we discussed in the first couple slides there. Another interesting trend that I'm sure you're pretty well aware of is mimicking popular libraries or NPM packages, attempting to trick developers into downloading a malicious package. In May 2022, WhiteSource came across an attack doing just this, where an attacker was mimicking popular AWS packages in NPM, taking advantage of unregistered package names. There we go. And additionally, you'll see that the discovery phase includes container, infrastructure, and service scanning for additional secrets, as well as context for actors. Actors like Team TNT, who we discussed on the second slide there, create sophisticated scripts to automate this entire process, which includes automating the removal of their trace as they go. If you're a Recorded Future customer or interested, I highly recommend working through our threat profiling process within Recorded Future University, as well as leveraging the open source tool called the Control Compass, which was actually created to accelerate the process of finding detections and attack simulations when hardening one's network. This process actually can be tailored towards your industry or specific campaign types such as cloud. So really looking at the specific attack vectors and attackers targeting cloud infrastructure. So specifically prioritizing threats to those. If you aren't a customer yet, I definitely recommend looking into openly available adversary prioritization exercises to fully understand the threat actors and pieces of malware that are relevant and actually have the capability and intent to target you or the things that you're kind of most interested in or care about most. So even though these attack vectors are well known throughout the cloud security community, as I'm sure you've seen, attackers continue to evolve their TTPs. So I wanted to briefly highlight some recent changes. The first is that crypto miners are currently the most common malware variants found within crowd-related attacks. And you can see from IBM's research here that their code base changes faster than any category, which is suggesting that threat actors targeting cloud assets are evolving faster than most. Yeah, it's pretty obvious on the slide there. And then, recently we at Recorded Future have seen 2 specific evolutions in threat actor behavior. One is for their targets, and the second is for their delivery method. The first, for their delivery, I guess I messed that up there, mixed it up. The first for their delivery methods are the rise in programming languages that are adaptable to different operating systems. So things like Rust and Golang, thanks to their ability to drop binary almost anywhere. We actually saw this very recently with a crypto mining malware named Denonia, specifically targeting Lambda functions. The first of its kind was actually written in Go. And then second is the targets. Actors are now aiming at higher value targets such as Linux-based cloud servers, containers, and orchestration platforms, and really moving up that chain of value for their targets specific to cloud. So even when this all seems hopeless and there's a lot of threats and ways they can get at you out there, it's really not. Luckily, there's many kind of cloud explorers that have gone before us to pave the way for a more secure future. Plenty of standards, there's plenty of frameworks and guidelines that lay the foundations for creating secure cloud environments. I'm sure you know probably all of those ones up there, but I really just want to kind of highlight the most well-known agnostic cloud security frameworks and standards just in case. The framework that we see most customers using to start out with would be the CIS hardening guides due to their simplicity and really the practical nature of them. But there's also multiple native security tools for each cloud service provider, such as AWS, that you should familiarize yourself with and use as well, since they're more specific to your environments. And then, finally, most of the standards and frameworks that I just mentioned have common areas of improvements, which can be broken down really into 5 phases. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole pyramid here, but I just want to touch on a couple. These frameworks and standards can be overwhelming, so really kind of taking this in bite-sized chunks and starting at one, which is visibility. Visibility is incredibly important. You need to first have situational awareness of all your cloud assets, including multi-cloud security posture, assets like virtual machines, containers, servers, and the configuration and compliance of them, so that you can truly understand your attack surface and the baseline for defense. And then once you have that situational awareness, you need to think about automated guardrails, which is step 2 there. Now, I know this sounds daunting, but it really involves using intelligence to understand the most common misconfigurations and attack vectors used against cloud assets. Things like open storage buckets and databases receiving traffic directly from the internet are good places to start. And then establishing automated workflows to remediate them before it even becomes an issue. So really starting with the visibility and then realizing what of those things that are out there can I automate to be able to take care of before they affect me. And then, before we part ways, I do want to kind of mention how Recorded Future can help with the situational awareness and mitigation of this. We've created a cloud resource center, which has out-of-the-box queries to search against search against our whole intelligence repository to understand cloud threats, common threat actors, malwares, and TTPs being used, and really more. So not just for cloud, but really threats out there, whether it comes to cyber or even the physical space. We're doing a lot now in physical security as well, in dis and misinformation campaigns. So really kind of the whole spectrum of threat vectors and not just cloud. The intelligence can be, gained, whether that be informational or actionable, but starting with queries like broad cyber activity, understanding new and emerging cloud vulnerabilities, as well as diving into common cloud misconfigurations that we're seeing in our collection, so that you can really have that information to establish that baseline to really even help with those automated processes we started or talked about on the next slide. Or you could use our intelligence to take action, which a lot of our customers are doing. This includes looking at specific malware targeting cloud instances, maybe even exporting detection rules, things like Yara and Sigma rules, to be able to go and hunt for those pieces of malware, those threat actors, as well as identifying cloud access keys in the wild, and even finding or being alerted on information from code repositories that you might not want out there. Additionally, we have 2 newer modules that are tailored to mitigating some major issues with cloud security. The first one is for credential leaks with our Identity Intelligence module. That's an API-first module aimed at providing kind of a way to discover and mitigate credential leaks before being sold on dark web marketplaces. Specifically, we're gaining access to high-fidelity credentials via InfoStealer logs that you can use and be alerted on and mitigate prior to them being sold, which is really cool. And then the second one is for really that cloud sprawl that we talk about, or the attack surface. So as more companies embrace cloud, there's obviously increased and unknown instances being spun up outside their purview of security. So our attack surface intelligence module, which is a recent purchase of the attack surface vendor Security Trails, helps you with just that, allowing companies to understand and get a continual holistic picture of their attack surface. And then you can also combine, kind of the cloud situational awareness and intelligence that you're getting from these areas with the rest of our intelligence to look, more generally across your technology stack or your physical assets, people, supply chain partners as well. So really kind of using intelligence to understand your whole threat landscape, and really get one step ahead of the adversary, since we're collecting on, where the adversary is, the forums they're talking about, the targets that they're talking about attacking, as well as, kind of how they're carrying that out. So really using intelligence as that common thread throughout. So with that, I really appreciate you kind of either holding off or going to lunch and coming here. We're over at booth 105, which is right down in the corner there. I'm happy to give you a demo or show you kind of our intelligence live with some of these things we talked about. So really appreciate you coming. Thanks so much.